Welcome back to Game-Based Learning in the World Language Classroom. The why, what, and how. We're on section 3 of my book, The How. I'm Madame Sensei. I teach Spanish, French, and Japanese to high schoolers out here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. If you want to help me tweak games, come up with new ones, please come talk to me at Roxem, at Minecraft Education Ambassadors, or the Minecraft Teachers Lounge, Duolingo Educators Network, or studio-nemo.com. We're on chapter 23 of my book. In our previous episode, I gave the sales pitch of why it's important to have your students write so much and how it's not actually going to make you have all that much extra work because you're not really grading it. You're just circling things that are wrong, or maybe even not. But just let them write because they're not going to get better at writing until they have opportunities to write. So now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, the actual games. All right. I have a lot of weird picture files. This is just part of them. Okay. I just like to project a real weird picture and have the students write about it. All right. This is a good one. And then leave space around the picture for as the students ask you, "Como dit-on blah 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 en français, blah blah blah, wa nihongo de nan desu ka," whatever. Leave space around it. Okay. So just whatever weird pictures you stumble upon these all the time on the interwebs. Okay. All these great, I love these perspective pictures, this type of thing. This one's a good one because when, just early on when they're learning the words big and little in like the second week of school, they can write sentences about this, Funny animal pictures. The students love writing about animals. This one, it's just like we're describing emotions, guys. Here's an animal picture. Well, here's another animal picture. And then I like pictures that are like seconds before disaster, moments before disaster. You'll always see these appearing in your thumbnail. So get some screenshots from them. I like you had one job. Okay, those are great. Especially, if we're talking about houses and rooms in the houses and stuff. These are great for the students to describe that. I have a bunch of Harvard Project Zero thinking routine ones. I'm going to skip over this because I'm going to talk about these more in depth when I do my free voluntary reading episode coming up. Fanfic. Oh my gosh, this is so great. So, many years ago, I started doing this. I didn't start doing it. My students started doing this. So, my Japanese class was working out of this book, Adventures in Japanese. And it's done the audiolingual method. So you've got skits. The students memorize a skit. They work with the words in the skit. They do substitution drills. They do transformation drills with the skit. It's fun. Okay. There's two characters, Emmy and Ken. And after a while, my students started making jokes about, Emmy is asking Ken if he likes sushi because she wants to take him on a date to a sushi restaurant. And then, my second year Japanese students simultaneously, because this was my first year Japanese students who started making these jokes, just simultaneously, my second year students in their book, there's like a third character introduced so they can have more conversations. And they started getting really jealous. They were like, oh my gosh, Mari, I'm going to pronounce it in a French way. Mari is trying to horn in on Kemi. They made up this couple named Kemi, and I was like, bingo, I got them. But I didn't even have to do anything because spontaneously my students just started writing skits and bring them to me and say, hey, I just wrote a new skit for Ken and Emmy. And I'm like, okay, we're going to do this in class today. So suddenly I had lots and lots of material. The students were drawing pictures and they were writing skits, and I was like, that's the ticket right there. Get them to write about the characters. This was back when I worked out of a textbook. I don't work out of a textbook anymore, but I do go back to Ken and Emmy because it's so much fun. So now you see why I lean so heavily on the Project World characters. Because, the students really glom onto them and they can write so much about these characters that they really like. And shortly after I was hired to teach Japanese, suddenly the principal came to me and said, guess what? You're going to be teaching French next year too. So choose a textbook. And so I went through all the textbooks and I finally decided I've got to have a textbook where the students can do more fanfic. All right. So that's why I settled on Beyond D, because they could write about these characters and their little contests that they're in. And then we have, then I was told, oh, by the way, you're also going to be teaching Spanish. That was the next year after that. And so, oh, Spanish book, we already have a Spanish textbook. I don't have any input into that, but there's this really fun little section of, it was Realidades at the time. And I still show it even today, even though we're not working out Realidades anymore. But there's this little hamster that gets lost in a classroom. So we write about that. And we do all sorts of stuff with that. But you can see this, the kids, no matter what we're doing in class, no matter what we're reading, no matter what we're watching, they want to make fanfic out of it. So capitalize on that. Another thing I like to do, I like to start with a comic strip. Is I often take out the dialogue and I say, okay, guys, whatever you want, write a dialogue. I don't care if it has to do with anything. Just write. This one I'm going to skip over because I'm going to talk about it more in the FVR episode. But I have some just really fun quick writes. I try to make my quick writes really fun so that the students can apply the dialogue, the words that they read about, and they remember them better. So this was Step Inside, which was pretend like you're some object and tell the story from the viewpoint of the object. So here I had, for example, maybe you're the windmill that Don Quixote is tilting towards. Maybe you're the magic potion that Asterix is drinking. You got Beto Beaumont again here. Maybe you're the banjo that falls out of the sky into his hands. Tell it from his story. All right, this one I've talked about a lot in the previous Duolingo episode where I was talking about how I use Duolingo in the World Language Classroom. So I'm going to breeze over this one too. Basically, I just have a bunch of pictures and I'll just have the students put them in order, or if these were just really cute, and I just put a picture up and have the students write a story about the picture. But here they can just choose 3 pictures, guys. Okay, there's your story. And it doesn't matter if the pictures go together or not. It's better when they don't. And I talked about this one with the sound effects and the pictures. They love that. This one, as an example, let's see. I'm trying to remember. Zari was cheering at a boxing match. This is my French student to this. Vikram heard a dog looking for its master, but it turned out to be Duo's dog, but he didn't pay any attention to the dog until he'd won the match, and then he heard the dog. And but each student came up with a different story about how these 3 pictures were linked together. All right, so these games are absolutely great because they're very random, and random I think is really good for the students to stretch and get out of their comfort zone, and they're not just parroting back to you. So either take all your quiz trade cards or any cards you've got for any game, maybe Teams Games Tournament or whatever. Just take the cards and plop them on the desk and say, okay, guys, grab 3. All right, write a story connecting those 3 words. I don't care what it is. All right, or you've got dice and you project on the board word number 1, word number 2, word number 3, up to number 6, and say, roll the dice. What's your word? Put them together in a story. Okay. Or I told you earlier how I take dice and I draw on it. So maybe I'll give each table of body parts dice and a color dice and a location dice and school supply dice. I don't know. And I say, okay, roll it. What do you come up with? Make a story. I'm a nerd. I think you can tell that now. I read so much. I have a lot of Dungeons and Dragons dice. And Dungeons and Dragons dice are really cool because, this is weather dice. Because maybe the Dungeon Master wants to say, okay, you're walking through the forest and rolls the dice. Oh, it's raining and lightning is striking everywhere. So you can have the students roll the dice and there's pictures on them. I've got body parts dice because maybe the Dungeon Master says, okay, the orc shoots his arrow and he hits you in the roll the dice. He hits you in the arm. So I've got lots of different weird dice. And I think I said in an earlier episode I couldn't afford all the dice, so that's why I started drawing on blocks. All right. Haiku is or poetry in general is great writing. All right. Now for my Japanese students, there's this magical moment when they learn to read, and it's absolutely wonderful. So I explained to them, all right, verbs come at the end of the sentence in Japanese. The word order is totally different. And those of you who teach French and Spanish, like I do, you know how many hundreds of millions of irregular verbs you're teaching. Japanese has 2 irregular verbs in the whole language, and even they work like all the other verbs. They're not really all that irregular, okay? Every verb is going to end the same. This is positive, all right? If it was negative, it would be must end, but this is mas. So how boring would rhyming be? Everything, arimasu, imasu, kakimasu, ikimasu, odorimasu, utaimasu. Those are totally boring rhymes, right? So haiku evolved because you can't rhyme. All right, let's just count syllables. Here's a syllable, here's a syllable, here's a syllable, here's a syllable. All right. So suddenly it's like the world opens up to my students when they see this, and they get it suddenly. So I teach them kake koteba because you only have 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, which means you really have to think about the meaning of every single word and see if you can get double meanings, double entendre, if I can say French. See how much meaning you can squeeze into there. So I've got to teach them kake koteba and nature imagery so that they can like double layer all that and everything. And they just have a ball with it at that point. Like earlier in 3rd grade when they were learning to write haiku, they were like, this is so boring. But suddenly when they understand the syllable count, it's like the world opens up to them. And it's pretty amazing. So this was a little Shrek haiku that one of my students wrote. For French and Spanish, I don't like to do haiku because that's very Japanese. I want to do something very French or very Spanish. So here I introduce the concept of an alexandrin to my French students, and I love this, okay? This is 12 syllables, okay? I am, my dear friend, very happy to see you. So there's 12 syllables here, and he says, oh, he's an Alexandrian because he's from Egypt. So, but, you know, any poetry that they write, maybe they don't have enough vocabulary to actually rhyme, but they can certainly write diamantes, and they can write you know, poems with structure. Give them the form of the poem, and they can do that. I'm going to talk about this. Go see my GLAD channel, my playlist. That's the word, playlist. Now I'm over 10 minutes. I'll talk about the sentence patterning chart, which is absolutely great writing practice. And then there's an episode on free voluntary reading coming up. And just these are all the things I do with free voluntary reading. Okay, I've got so much to talk about, so I'm going to make that another little playlist or series or something. Okay, sorry I went over 10 minutes. Next episode, we're going to talk about gamifying your classroom, just putting your classroom in the skin of it's a fun place to be. Hope to see you there.